Jamaica's economy amid COVID-19. Now, the forum is actually really live right now. It's going to be on the Customs website, which is www.jacustoms.gov.jm. You can tune in there. We're also live on Nationwide 90 FM, and you can also check out this on YouTube. You can check out the Nationwide YouTube page there for the information.
And we're live too on the Jamaica News Network, as well as on jamaica-gleaner.com with coverage on the Gleaner's Twitter and Instagram pages. You can follow us using @JamaicaGleaner and also using the hashtag Customs Forum.
So we take the opportunity to welcome the panelists who will be involved in the discussions today. I start with the very hardworking commissioner herself. She is the CEO and commissioner of the Jamaica Customs Agency, Mrs. Velma Walker. Thanks for having us.
Thank you, thank you.
I also will tell you that we have Mr. David Martin, who is the Deputy President of the Jamaica Manufacturers and Exporters Association. Hi, David. We have Mr. Mark Williams, who is Chief Executive Officer at Kingston Wharves Limited. You have had your hands full in all of this, and we're going to be talking about it. On the end of the table, we have Mr. Mark Gonzalez, who is President of the Courier Association of Jamaica. And I also have the lady, the hardworking lady, Mrs. Mitzi Gordon-Burke Green, who is President of the Customs Brokers and Freight Forwarders Association of Jamaica. Thank you very much.
And we're also digital, Patria. So we have on Zoom Mr. Charles Johnston. He is the President of the Shipping Association of Jamaica. Mr. Hans de Jong, he's the Chief Executive Officer of the Kingston Freeport Terminal Limited. Keith Duncan is the President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Mr. Michael McMorris, he's First Vice President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. And Trevor Riley, CEO of the Shipping Association of Jamaica, as well as Mr. Junior Waugh, President of the Jamaica Society of Customs Brokers. We also have Ms. Simone Murdoch, Marketing and Client Services Manager, as well as Valerie Campbell, Terminal Manager, both of Kingston Wharves Limited. And from the media, we're joined by our counterparts, Alicia Smith from the Jamaica Information Service, as well as Balford Henry representing the Jamaica Observer.
A full house, folks. We also have supporting the commissioner, members of her team from the Jamaica Customs Agency. They too are joining us virtually. We have Mr. Marlon Lowe, who is the Deputy Commissioner of Operations here at Jamaica Customs. We have Mrs. Selena Clark-Graham, who is the Senior Director of the Kingston Operations. And we also have Mr. Andre Williams, who is the Senior Director and the Chief Information Officer here at Customs. We also have a couple more folks. We have Mr. Kirk Benjamin, who is the Senior Director of Central Operations, and also Mr. Earl Stewart Jr., who is the Director of Planning and Research.
Well, thank you so much for joining us all. And to get things off, we'd like to invite the Customs Commissioner, Mrs. Velma Ricketts-Walker, to present her overview as to how the Jamaica Customs Department is seeking to respond to the COVID-19 crisis. Mrs. Walker?
Thank you so much, Damien. But just allow me to do an overview as it relates to the manifestation of this discussion forum. Now, mitigation strategies to alleviate the spread of this unprecedented pandemic, COVID-19, have unavoidably been curtailing economic activities globally, and of course, within Jamaica. The maintenance of the international trade is, however, pivotal to defeating this pandemic. And as a critical link within Jamaica's trade and business ecosystems, the Jamaica Customs Agency deemed it necessary to collaborate with our stakeholders to discuss how, together, we can keep Jamaica's ecosystem operating efficiently amid the COVID-19 crisis. Hence, the theme for today, Jamaica Still Open for Business, of course, under the mantra of Jamaica Economy, sustaining it amidst COVID-19. Now, collectively, we stand resolute in supporting the government of Jamaica in the fight against the pandemic. We recognize that the government of Jamaica has activated its economic stimulus package with a mix of liquidity and solvency measures to minimize the disruption in the essential sectors and household purchasing power. Clearly, the government of Jamaica has been very responsive in establishing the policy framework. Therefore, as leaders, both in public and private sector, it is our duty to strengthen the operational linkages in this ecosystem. And so, emanated from this discussion, we would love to see that coming out of this are highlights of the business continuity plans of the various entities amidst COVID-19, a reassurance of the agility, responsiveness, and diversification of the supply chain, that operational efficiency is maintained even as there are changes or adjustments to facilitate legitimate trade and business transactions, that there is coordination and synergy among stakeholders, and that the early action by the private and public sectors to ensure continuity or even full operation post-COVID-19. That, of course, all entities have instituted the public health measures to protect employees and, of course, customers. And to reassure Jamaicans that the international trading community, that productivity and economic activity, to include manufacturing, distribution, importation, and exportation, continues. And that there is a collaborative focus on quick recovery of the economy. But importantly, that the strength and resilience of the Jamaican people will translate in the resilience of our economy and society as we evolved in what seems to be the new normal. And overall, that we are contributing to sustaining the economic health of our island. And so I thank all our partners who are here, both in person and online, in this, what we believe will be a riveting discussion in moving us forward as a country. Now, what is the Jamaica Customs doing? In treating with this situation that has come on us, we looked at the deployment of our human resources. And the impact of COVID-19 has significantly constrained the capacity of human resources globally. But for Jamaica Customs, the focus has been to mitigate this as quickly as possible. And we did that through advanced preparation. From when the outbreak was in China, we had significant sensitization awareness and workshop with the team, and to ensure that they are pretty much aware of the crisis, how it impacts us via our health, but also how it will impact the economy, and how we as an entity should be able to respond in a positive way. We ensured that we had strict adherence to the government's public health measures and protocols, ensuring that the sanitation and the sanitization procedures and protocols are adhered to, not only for our staff, but also for our customers. The agency would have implemented and instituted its telecommuting and teleworking policies to ensure that staff are available or adequately available to respond to the various areas. That we found would have been working well for us. In this time, we also recognize that technology is very important to how we respond. And so the agency, through the use of technology and automation, became very critical in this time. And considering what is happening, we are very proud of our customs automated system that remained robust and facilitated the online submission of declaration. To date, we know that 90% of all our documentary transaction comes through that system, and it allows for our customs brokers and any other entity that uses the system to use it at anywhere in the world, which we feel that is significant to business continuity. We also know that this platform allows for other border regulatory entities to integrate and to utilize, so it promotes remote working, which helps with the continuity of business. This very system that we speak about is none other than our Asikuda World System. And it is zero rated or has toll-free access. Therefore, it shouldn't cost anyone to log on to such system. That again promotes business continuity. We also strive to make adjustments within our procedures. And one of the things that we observed and did was to ensure that manufacturers who benefited from the productive input relief and who would have been due for I wouldn't want to call it reappointment, but to be renewed within this year, we have sought to extend that system so that by 6 months, so that they are not pressured and they will continue to redeem or reap the benefit under such system. And that system allows for manufacturers to have their raw materials being imported at no duties and taxes. And so that is another way in which we continue to ensure that business continues. But we also try to work with our intermediaries, and I call them our custom brokers, who relate to us and the importing and exporting public by ensuring that if it is their renewal becomes due, that we allow for them to, we give an extension, so to speak, so that they can renew as soon as they have all the supporting documents in place, because we want business to continue. But in all, when you look at importation, exportation, and all the other transaction that goes with it, we also know that there is increased risk. And so our border protection activities also becomes necessary for us to improve on. And so what we have been doing is increasing our efforts as it relates to risk management, as it relates to the security, and as it relates to our intelligence-led operation. And so we have been doing a number of advanced risk management efforts to boost this operation. So those are some of the areas that we have been looking at so far and continue. I also want to say that encourage Jamaicans that this is a crisis that we can beat, and this is the time that we look into the innovativeness, the creativity, and the resilience of the people and make it work for us as a country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I think that's actually a great place to segue to David Martin, because there's an interdependence that we're talking about. We see so many people around the room, on Zoom, and everybody in this room and in this space is heavily dependent on each other to ensure that Jamaica stays open for business. Those businesses that you represent, the manufacturers of this country, they have fairs, they're going through a difficult time, but there's also opportunity in all of this. What's happening with your members?
So, well, let's start by saying, I mean, the crisis, what the crisis has done, as everybody knows, is, well, it's shut down our tourism sector, and 57%, just based on a survey we did recently, of manufacturers, farmers, exporters, people in the productive sector would have been affected by that fallout in the tourism sector. Up to 18% of them would have lost a half to 100% of the business. So there's that. And then on the other hand, the economies here is a bit suppressed right now because, you know, we have less shopping hours, people are scared, income is reduced or lost for a chunk of people. So the demand just for items is falling down in the domestic economy. And then in the external economies, we're getting the same blowback from the same exact situation that's playing out here is playing out in the US and the UK. So everybody is experiencing reduced demand for their products. So what all of us have to do, apart from obviously when the COVID crisis started, everybody took on board sanitation, hygiene, work from home policies, And the discussion right now actually is more about how do we make it even better to help the government to flatten the curve.
I think the natural question from persons who would be listening, John Public, do we have enough food here right now to feed us? Do we have enough supplies on island right now to feed us? We're hearing we need ventilators, we need masks. Do we have those things here, and can we get them here if we don't?
All right, so let's separate. So food, I would suggest that there's no issue with the supply of food. I'm not aware of any problems whatsoever with any food item because people who are manufacturing domestically, nothing is stopping them from producing, and they are producing.
Raw materials getting in?
To the best of my knowledge, I've not heard of any.
And
I've
that's what
heard of
customs here
I've
for,
heard
yeah.
of hiccups. Hiccups have happened in the last 3 months because to the extent that you import raw materials like something like oil from Malaysia, whilst Malaysia doesn't have a problem, but shipping from China, that whole region had slowed down because of the crisis.
Packaging
slowed down, it
material.
doesn't stop. But most people are navigating the current circumstances.
And David, don't forget
raw materials.
the local farmers.
There are several issues we have to come back to, but we want to go to Mr. Mark Williams. And we need to come back to you shortly, though, to hear about the 18% who have not lost their business. Exactly what are they?
Have lost.
Who have lost?
Yeah, 18% have lost half to all of their business.
Right. So the
Because of
others,
tourism.
the others who remain in business, exactly what are they doing and how are they coping? But Mr. Williams, can we ask you what has been happening at Kingston Wharves Limited, and how are you making the best use of this crisis, so to speak?
Well, I'd like to start by saying, in this time of uncertainty, I think what Kingston Wharves is offering is a level of certainty. We are open for business. We are open for 24-hour operations. And we want to assure the public, certainly want to assure our international partners or regional partners, and certainly the Jamaican public, that Kingston Wharves is prepared to do whatever it takes to ensure that the country continues to receive steady supplies of cargo, of raw material. Once it can get in a ship, Kingston Wharves will ensure that it's taken off and it reaches the distribution trade within acceptable time. So whatever we've been doing, apart from, as David said, the standard issues of sanitization, we've moved to having our non-operational team working from home. Given the recent issue of the curfew, we facilitated 12-hour shifts, just in case, we normally run 3 8-hour shifts, with one going home at 11 p.m. Just in case those persons would have encountered difficulties, what we've done, we've moved to 2 12 hours. So it's from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and again from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And we've made the requisite resources available to our staff to ensure that operations remain. As it relates to our domestic consumers, what is loosely called the barrel traders, we've been working with Jamaica Customs, and I must applaud Commissioner Walker and her team for the wonderful job that they're doing working with Kingston Wharves to ensure that those persons can get their supplies of sanitization equipment, get their supplies of groceries, because we still do have a few persons in the diaspora sending back goods for their loved ones. So we're having that, ensuring that operating. We've moved to an appointment system, and again, that has worked really, really well. We have people making appointments so that we can facilitate having the requisite number of personnel on hand to ensure that we maintain social distancing, ensure that we can give predictable times for clearing of the cargo. So in a nutshell, we're fully open for business, and we're prepared to do whatever it takes to keep the Jamaican economy going.
Mitzi Gordon Burke Green, you would be very much involved in what's happening with Asikuda. You would have started that transition to be able to do things online. So this is a normal that you have been getting used to for quite some time. But I do want to find out, in terms of getting goods here, opening of factories outside of Jamaica and getting goods here, how has that been affecting your members?
Thanks, Patricia. Well, for our members, generally no, we haven't had a lot of fallout. we're still having cargo coming in, and like customs, like Kingston Wharves and the other ports, we're open for business, and we are key in the trade. So if we're not there to clear the goods, then the customers will not be able to get them. So once customs and the port operators are working, then custom brokers will be working as well. And we have been collaborating closely, even closer, with customs and the port operators on a daily basis since COVID, in order to ensure that we're meeting the requirements of the law of the country, and that we're putting things in place that our customers, our manufacturers, our barrel customers are meeting those requirements, and that we're still getting the cargo to them on a timely basis.
How do you exercise social distancing clearing a barrel?
All right, so what has been put in place now, and I think it is working, and Mark mentioned that, is that in the case of Kingston Wharf, they've put an appointment system in place. And so what freight forwarders and custom brokers are doing, they're actually making appointments in two ways. One, we make appointments to do the clearance for our customers. So generally we would not have done clearance for these customers, but we are now reaching out to those customers to ensure that we offer them the service, in some instances at a nominal rate, just to be able to cover our costs, so that we are ensuring that they are not coming into our offices and they're not going on the port, because the more people we have, obviously the more difficult it will be to achieve the social distancing. So we're making those arrangements, and we're also making arrangements because there are some customers who would prefer to come in, and based on the cargo type, we would have them come in, and we make appointments for them, so that, you know, it's not just that you get up and walk in to our offices anymore, is that we make an appointment for you with the ports, and you come in to be there, and that has helped. Obviously there's always room for improvement, and only yesterday afternoon we had a meeting with Kingston Wharves to see how best we can tweak to make sure that we are achieving social distancing, because at the end of the day we need to be here after COVID. And that's what it is. We need to be here, our customers need to be here, our staff need to be here. So in all of this, the things that we're putting in place, we have to consider our customers, our staff. For us, we also have staff working from home. We have staff who have not come in since the first case, because they now have to travel on the public transportation. So members of the industry, they've taken the decision to keep those staff at home, even not working. There are others, because of Asekuda being online, we're able to work, they're able to be set up to work from home, and that is really a big plus for us. So speaking with members of the Caribbean Custom Brokers Association, what we find in the other islands, we are way ahead, because they're clamoring for being able to do a lot of the things that we're doing online, and I feel privileged that we are so far ahead that we are ready for what is happening now with COVID.
Very well. So, Mark Gonzalez, you're president of the Courier Association of Jamaica. What opportunities are you reaping from this crisis?
I'm happy that you asked that question. In a time of crisis, you can imagine you're saying that we are reaching opportunities. However, the fact is that logistics is alive and well in Jamaica. I represent chiefly the e-commerce sector, which facilitates persons shopping online overseas. And since the advent of COVID, we have not seen a reduction in that sector.
People still buying candle
People
and
are
shoes and
still
clothes
buying
and
shoes
electronics.
Exactly so.
And hand sanitizers.
And hand sanitizers, if they can get it. But what we are seeing, though, is a shift, and it's becoming the new norm now, where persons are, in fact, shopping online. So e-commerce is a buzz, and we are here to facilitate them. Particularly I want to commend customs, because since the advent of this, trade facilitation is at its highest. We've not had any issues clearing through the airport. The officers and the team, they are facilitating speedy movement of the cargo, and we are delivering to our clients.
And I've seen your members getting more nimble, adding new services even in the crisis. Door deliveries
They
being
are.
a new service for a lot of them. So they recognize that my location can't have a lot of people. Let me deliver to your door.
Exactly so. I spoke to a member just this week who informed me that they are actually doing a 24-hour service whereby persons can pick up their items even from the security guard. So they are doing
Just
curbside
not after
delivery.
8.
Well, it's an essential service, and so we are providing the service as best as possible.
Well,
Interesting.
in a moment, we're going to be joining some of our other representatives who are on Zoom. But let's go back to David Martin, because you were raising some very interesting points a while ago that up to 18% of your members would have lost 50 to 100% of their business. So those who are remaining in business, what are they exploiting?
Well, all right. So some of the opportunities that I'm aware of have emerged. So on the safety equipment, which is there's a shortage of it, quite frankly. You have some people that have been quickly able to pivot to the manufacturing of hand sanitizer. More than one companies. The masks are going to become a big thing. We're suggesting it, we're advocating it, that masks can help with the spread. So there is people repurposing their facilities for mask making.
Yes. Garment construction businesses are churning out masks.
Exactly.
Yes.
And another example is ventilators are very difficult to get now. I know the private sector had put together to donate some ventilators to the hospitals, but that market is very tight. And I see where the CMU, or not the CMU, a couple of guys connected.
It's CMU.
CMU
Yes.
actually built a ventilator. So
marketing,
they
yes.
themselves, locally, we can create solutions for that need. So that's just a couple of quick examples. The companies are seeing different opportunities emerge with the circumstances. So I'm aware of some that have seen opportunities open in the Caribbean because they are having supply issues, and it just turns out we can supply. So they're opening up some new markets there.
For what kind of products?
Things like milk.
Milk.
Yes. So remember, when the tourism fell out, that's a whole bunch of less mouths to feed, and so we're still producing all this stuff. So we're busy trying to find a home for these value-added agricultural products, and that's just an example that there's markets emerging for that outside of the norm, and hopefully will continue to exist after we get past this crisis. For like my business, you mentioned e-commerce has gone up quite a bit. So whilst our market has collapsed because tourism the whole travel industry is collapsed, people that are familiar with the product are now looking for it online. So we've seen a big jump in our online sales.
So even in the crisis, there's opportunity.
Yeah, the overall business has contracted, but I'm
Yes.
just saying the business has shifted. So it's kind of giving you an indication from now as to what world will be like after COVID. I think consumers everywhere will embrace more e-commerce type approach to shopping, because having done it for 6 months, getting door deliveries from the supermarket or from PriceSmart or whatever.
Yes.
Once you get into that habit, I think people are just going to keep doing it. So the world will change after COVID.
I want to go to Mark Williams for a second, because one of the things when we think about the safety and security side, more so the safety, vessels are coming from around the world, and there's a reason we've closed our borders to passenger traffic because of those fears. A ship must be sailed by a captain coming from somewhere. There is a crew that's coming from somewhere. How are you ensuring the safety of your own members who are working 24 hours on the port, and also ensuring you now become the gatekeepers for the rest of the country with these crews that are coming in from around the world? How are you doing that?
Certainly. Well, there's an ecosystem of business partners. So as it relates to the vessels coming in, the regulating authority, the Port Authority of Jamaica, they are responsible for that. And there are clear established protocols about Jamaica personnel boarding these vessels before they're allowed to come to the terminal, before they're allowed to go to Kingston Wharves or to KFTL. So there are established protocol in place. They through the Port Authority, they issue additional instructions that no one is allowed to disembark the vessels. And our people, if they go on the vessel to do what we call the unlashing, there are clear established protocol, hand sanitization, mask, etc., etc. So it's the process is very robust. We have no concern there. I think the PAG has done an exceptionally good job in ensuring that the country remains safe. So there are no issues there.
We have a couple of people who are joining us online, and one of them, Mrs. Walker, is asking you just to repeat your announcements at the beginning in respect of the allowances being made for people who are bringing in materials, raw materials in particular.
Okay, so that was with respect to the manufacturers who are approved to benefit from the productive input relief. And that's an incentive program offered by government to facilitate the manufacturing process, in that they are allowed to bring in their raw materials free of certain duties and taxes.
But that's something that they would have had to be registered both with MICAF and with customs prior to bringing in that first shipment.
Certainly, and that's why I said approved for that procedure or for that benefit. So we work alongside with the MICAF as well as our customs team here that monitors this arrangement, which is our incentive team. And we go through a robust renewal process, because once you're allowing for any incentives, you have to ensure that that incentive, while being transparent, must be for the purpose to which it was given. And so the monitoring of such process is robustly done by our team at Customs in conjunction with MICAF to ensure that we are also protecting while we are giving out those benefits. Yes.
But it's a very helpful tool in ensuring that we stay open for business as a country. And there are a lot of small businesses.
It certainly is. And in looking at the numbers, we have about 486 manufacturers who benefit from such incentive. And we have about 30% who would be expected to, their incentive program would be expired within this year. And so that is why we thought it necessary to allow for the extension, so that there is no anxiety or fear when that time comes for them to continue to business.
She had also mentioned that the renewal process has been extended. You said 6 months?
Yes.
Yes.
So that just creates an additional window for the manufacturers that use it.
Mr. Gordon, in the interim, let me just ask you about whether or not factories, particularly in China, are they open for business? There are a lot of our companies that take raw materials, that take finished goods, that take packaging material from companies in China. And I know you haven't seen the slowing down that's traditional, the slowing down that we expected to see or people were anticipating to see as a result of COVID. But there are some things that come with this time of year. The factories close because of Chinese New Year. People's stock get depleted here in Jamaica because of the Christmas buying. Are you anticipating any challenges in the next 60 days with goods coming out of China?
I'll answer that very just by saying we're actually having cargo now coming out of Wuhan. Wuhan being the area where all of this started. Cargo is coming out, and cargo is coming out of Wuhan. So you know that from there we are recovering. Obviously what is happening with the rest of the world is yet to be seen. But as it relates to China, we are getting our cargo in.
Well, let's try back again for Mr. Johnston. Mr. Johnston? Not quite ready yet for Mr. Johnston, but let me pick up on that same issue you were raising a while ago, Mrs. Burke-Green. The United States is another area that Jamaica does significant trading with, which is now battling the COVID-19. What are you seeing in respect of trade with the United States and Jamaica?
As it relates to trade, generally, no, we are not having any fall-offs. We're still receiving cargo. Yes, in instances, let us say out of the UK, we're having less cargo. There's less cargo being sent. So there are some changes there. It's not significant. At the moment, trade continues. And I think from our borders are open and the borders of the other areas, and I think most countries are not very quick to close in their borders against international trade, because that will really dictate how quickly each of these economies will bounce back after COVID.
Commissioner, I wanted to ask you what happens with your team and how things would have changed significantly here at Customs House. One of the things that you would have been integral in is at the ports of entry for passengers coming in, you would have been one of those first points of contact. Airports closed, no passengers coming in. What happens with those team members?
Thank you so much for that question. So you, of course, you would have mentioned that our passengers, our staff being, customer facing at the passenger terminal, and their work is really surrounding that activity. Having the passengers not coming in anymore, we then had to figure out how do we ensure that our team members remain productively engaged, though remote working or teleworking. And so what we did was to ensure that our team members signed on to our customs e-learning platform, because one would appreciate that based on the number of passenger traffic pre-COVID, that sometimes it's difficult to have our team members in training environment. And so this now for us is an opportunity to ensure that certain training continues even in this crisis. So a number of team members are at home going through our online training. We are also connected to the World Customs e-learning platform, where the team members have to be registered. They have to go through the rigors of such training and also ensure that they do the necessary assessment and given their certification. So it is a process that provides us with the ability to monitor what is happening with our team members.
So productivity continues?
Yes, it does.
Fair enough. I think we've sorted out the issues with Zoom, and we should be able to contact the folks there.
Mr. Johnston?
If you can't hear me, ask Mr. Riley, Trevor Riley, to speak for the SAJ.
I think you're being heard now, though, Charlie.
Okay, well, I wanted the moderator asked a question about food supply. And I just want to say that I'm chairman of Jamaica Producers Group, which supplies bananas and pineapples. And there's a whole heap of farmers in Jamaica that are having difficulty getting food to the customers at this time. So I think we need to look at that as well. Jamaicans need to look at that as well, rather than bringing in stuff from overseas. We need to be looking at our farmers right now. How can they supply the local community? With regard to the Shipping Association of Jamaica, we are a private sector members organization. We represent all the private sector in the shipping industry in Jamaica, the terminals, the agents, shipping lines. For this. Let Trevor tell you more about the labor side and how we supply labor to the ships and to the terminals as we speak. So Trevor, would you join us now?
Yes, I'll jump in. The Shipping Association is multifaceted. We have several lines of activities. One of them, as Mr. Johnson just mentioned, is the representation of the private sector members of the shipping industry. But we also provide services to the port. In particular, we provide about 350 workers across the two terminals, Kingston Wharves Limited and KFTL. Really in a supportive way. We employ what we call the lashers, stevedores, and their job, they are the third set of people who go on a vessel after the immigration and quarantine people. Their job is to prepare the cargo for discharge from the vessels and to secure containers and other cargo on vessels when the vessels are to depart. we provide a supportive role. We work very closely with both terminals and supply labor as needed. We've worked very closely with them in terms of the response to COVID, in general hygiene, sanitation issues. There is some decision now about people wearing masks on the port. We have to ensure all our workers are properly equipped to support.
I'm assuming
we
outfitted with
work
the masks and the things that are required for them to be safe on the ports. Commissioner, I have a question I'm hoping that you can address. Will the Jamaica Customs Authority be waiving fees or making changes to facilitate persons who are shippers and or consignees on bills of lading but are in isolation or quarantine? How will that work? And can someone else act on their behalf?
All right, so within the clearance process, yes, anyone can act on your behalf as long as that person is so authorized to do so by the individual. And normally we request that it is certified or validated by Justice of the Peace. And so that the processing of clearance of goods continues. As it relates to the reduction of fees, I'm not certain what fees the person would be mentioning, but only to say that as it relates to any reduction of fees or other incentive programs, all of that would have already been contained within the government's economic stimulus package.
But I do want to come back to the person who will act on your behalf, because I can see the complication if I'm in isolation or if I'm quarantined.
Yeah.
I can't give you a letter I can't sign and give you a letter to act on my behalf at the port. How perhaps might people navigate that difficulty?
Well, it's not only, it depends on the nature of the cargo that you're talking about, because that is why we have customs brokers who facilitate this type of arrangement. And we also have to respect the electronic platform. And though there might not be a physical letter, there's one that can be done over the system so that it can be facilitated as well.
Fair enough.
Well, let me stick with you, Commissioner, because you also have a location in Montego Bay, St. James. What's happening in Montego Bay, St. James?
Well, Montego Bay is the center where you have most passenger traffic at the Sangsa International Airport. However, one would appreciate that what is happening now with passengers, that those personnel there would not have such activity. Also, bear in mind, though, that you still have air cargo activity going on as it relates to the importation and the exportation. So that activity continues. Also, within Montego Bay, you do have 2 public bonded warehouses that continues to clear the regular commercial and non-commercial shipment, and those activities remain and are continued.
So with, for example, a reduction in the number of incoming passengers, are you doing any readjustments of some of your customs officers in respect of where they would be stationed?
Oh, certainly. So the staff outside of the ones who would have been at home doing their online training and other remote from work activity, what we do is redeploy the staff according to the needs of the different entities. Also having a rotation or a segregation policy in place to manage the number of staff within one area, as well as to make sure that the physical distancing protocols are upheld as well. But we have a strategy in place that should, in case a member is infected, we have other staff that can come on board. And so we try not to put everybody in one place, but to ensure that for the respective operation, that adequate staffing is there to treat with it.
Patria, I think we have Zoom back in now, and we'd like to go to Mr. Keith Duncan, who is the president of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica. Mr. Duncan, are you with us? How has it been going for the PSOJ?
Moving along, white balancing, exploitation, that we don't allow the economy to shut down as possible, keep it moving in the areas that we can. Once we are responsible and we are able to really observe the protocols that Ministry of Health has put in place. For example, are you guys hearing me?
Yes, we are.
I'm hearing you.
Your problem. Not hearing
Go on
me.
again.
As well.
We're hearing you, Mr. Duncan. Go right ahead.
Working with the technology as best we can. We're hearing.
Go right ahead.
Working with the technology as best we can. We're hearing.
Yeah, but as I said, I have to make a class to we as a private sector have to ensure that we can ensure that in flattening the curve, we can keep the economic activity rolling and industry and activity moving along. Keep business rolling as much as possible. While we have lost the tourism sector linkages, we have to ensure that we keep manufacturing going. We have to ensure that we keep business process outsourcing going, and these retail and the wholesale trade, they're all moving along nicely. The key is that the social distancing protocols as with in engaging with our employees while keeping economic activity going, so that when we're able to take on the other side of the continent, we will have a platform. And secondly, then we're now looking at the post-COVID environment to work through how does that new normal look? How do work practices change? How does the telecommuting impact our economy and how we go about business going forward? How do we strengthen our domestic economy so that we're not subject to the kind of risk that we have seen manifest as currently? So therefore, you really have to determine the strategies going forward to make Jamaica a lot more resilient, make our cultural sector working along with them. There's Jeffrey Hall from Jamaica Producers, Matthew Lane from CD Foods, and these guys who are really trying to see how we can and get our Jamaican products into and support our Jamaican producers.
Thanks, Keith. You know, David, Keith talks about the new normal, and one of the questions is, will we ever revert to the Jamaica that was pre-COVID? How many of the things that we have implemented as businesses, as Jamaicans, how many of those things are going to carry into the new normal from where your members sit?
Well, let me answer it this way. I want to just touch briefly on farmers. So farming and agriculture, I think there's an opportunity here to potentially transform everything, just because of what has happened with COVID. I think it's very important that Jamaicans appreciate that. I mean, our farmers have been really affected by the sudden collapse in a significant part of their market, and so we're actively doing.
Can you turn on your mic there, please? Yeah.
We're actively doing a campaign to say yes to fresh. Okay. I see. So there are private sector players that are airing ads encouraging Jamaicans to buy Jamaican fresh produce, fruits and vegetables and so on, because it's fresher, and we're saying make an active decision to choose a Jamaican grown thing over an imported apple or asparagus.
Absolutely.
Or this kind of thing, because it is just as good, if not better for you, and it would help Jamaica. So coming out of COVID, I think there's an opportunity for the country to sort of re-examine, questions about food security, to what extent we should implement enablers for that kind of industry to thrive a bit more, to substitute for some of the stuff.
And I think
that's
generally
coming in.
self-reliance. How many of the things that we need and use as Jamaicans every day are made here, can be made here? Do we buy from here?
So I stress enabling environment because I think if we create the right environment, people will act. But there's a part of it where we need our Jamaican fellow men to actively choose local over imported. Just shifting now to some of the stuff like, so work from home, I mean, we've started to ask ourselves the question to what extent we continue work from home.
And there were a lot of CEOs who were very resistant to work from home. Monitoring and productivity concerns were on the table. Commissioner, you've had to embrace some work from home tools,
Yes.
as does your members.
Yes, so I think a lot of us are, light bulb have gone off and we're saying, maybe we can keep some of this stuff, continue to do it. Virtual meetings, I mean, from this crisis emerged, all of my meetings have been virtual. I've had very few face-to-face meetings.
Well, probably this is a good time to bring in Simone Murdoch, who is Marketing and Client Services Manager at KWL. And we'd also like to hear from Michael McMorris, who is first Vice President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. Let's take Mr. McMorris first, though, on this issue of productivity amid the COVID crisis. What's your analysis of what has been happening so far?
Thank you for having me. And good morning to all your viewers. At the JCC, we've been like monitoring all members in their industries. It would be safe to say that it has been a challenge for many of the companies, especially those that are not purely services and therefore, or rather, services that can be transmitted over the telephone or over the internet. It has been a challenge. We have been talking about reasonable guidelines to keep the businesses going, and this has worked for a number of parties. So businesses going forward, they are social distancing, they are maintaining very stringent hygiene practices, even in the midst of having to make some layoffs because demand has fallen. Businesses are still moving forward and doing the best that they can, but it is going to be a challenge to the economy and the recovery. And so we continue to monitor and try and provide support. I think the government has been very proactive in that regard. Certainly in terms of the plan, the execution of the care program has to be delivered so that people can actually get the money that the government is talking about. That is crucial to sustaining families and sustaining workers as well.
Yeah, I know Petria has some more questions that she wants to pose, but let's bring in Simone Murdoch, the Marketing and Client Services Manager at Kingston Wharves Limited. On the issue of productivity, Ms. Murdoch, how has it been for Kingston Wharves?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, for Kingston Wharves, Mr. Williams would have already said that we share a wide range of customers, from manufacturers to distributors, to businesses, to hospitals, and also to families. So our main effort is to have as much normalcy around clearing cargo for those customer group as well as for exporters. So we need to keep that in mind, that export and still earning business at this time is important. One of the key things would have been our appointment service, which we are implementing and every day trying to improve because of the short implementation time. So we thank our customers for seeing with us through this implementation, and we continue to ask them to employ our mobile methods. There's a nice banner behind Mr. Williams that shows that KW Mobile is available for any Android phone. You can download and pay any Kingston Wharf bill of lading. Once that bill of lading is released by the agent and the charges are updated, you can pay for any BL from anywhere in the world. And we also recognize that many families would have been normally shipping this time of year for Easter, and we've seen that usual uptick, not as much as we would have grown accustomed to, but there is an uptick. And in trying to manage our teams, with our rotating teams, we're trying to ensure that the wait time through the appointment system is still a reasonable time for customers to get served.
Mitzi, you support businesses, but your members are businesses themselves. And when you think through your business continuity plans and crisis that may come up in business, certainly for you, hurricanes in the hurricane period would be one of those things. You don't
Everybody gone
anticipate
quiet
that the
again?
country is
I think
virtually,
I think the
countries around
microphone
the
in the
world
main room
are
is
virtually going to be
muted.
on lockdown as a
Right,
result of
excuse me.
disease. How do you plan for a crisis for your members? How would you have, I know Commissioner was saying you hear in China that in Wuhan there is this thing called COVID-19. And we know that a lot of our shipments come out of China. What do you do the day you hear that?
There's not much that we can do as it relates to the whether or not the cargo comes, because it really rests on what does our customer do. Because if the customer is not moving, then we're not able to move. But generally for us, we need to look at what else can we do, what other services can we offer. We started out, for most of us customer brokers, as we started out as customs broker, just doing customs brokerage. But over the years, we have had to diversify. We do courier, we do freight forwarding, we do trucking. We provide pretty much the end-to-end service for our customer. In some instances, we're acting as purchasers on behalf of our customers. So we have to look at what else can we do for our customer, what other service that we can provide. So just like any other business that you look at, how do you grow your portfolio? Is that a custom broker has to do the same thing.
And you've certainly been doing that in the last couple of months.
We have to. There would be restrictions on how much more you can do now, but at the end of the day, yes, we have to. And we have added stuff because, as I said, there are custom brokers who maybe would not have offered a door-to-door service before,
Clearing barrels.
but now they are doing that because it is necessary for it to be done.
Yeah.
There is an issue I want to pick up, Patria, which is the readjusting of the forecasting for earnings, certainly from their respective entities. Let me begin with the Jamaica Customs Agency, since I think it may be making the most money in the room here. And then I'll go to Kingston Wharves. I think it's right behind you. But in terms of your forecasting, Mrs. Velma Ricketts-Walker, how has it been going for the Customs Agency with your projections for the fiscal year?
For this fiscal year? All right, so just to say that for the last fiscal year, we know that the revenue remained on target for year to date. We would have experienced a shortfall in March of 2020, and which is understandable given what is going on. Now, as it relates to our revenue targets, that is not set by us, but by the Ministry of Finance in collaboration with what is going on in terms of the importing environment and the activities that follows. So in the ministry's projection, they would do the necessary environmental scan, assessing the situation and to see where would the revenue stream lie. And as a result of that, I know that what is happening, they would have to make some adjustment in keeping with what is happening so that they can project accordingly and be more precise so that we don't have projections that goes far out of what is actually happening. So, the conversation continues and we expect that the business will increase, because with the increase in business comes the increase in revenues, right? And so we expect that to happen. However, there is a lot of concerns, and in weighing that, we know that the necessary targets will be what it should be according to the environmental scale.
Let's move to Kingston Wharves Limited, Mark Williams in the meanwhile.
Well, what I'll say about this, while Kingston Wharves have had a very good first quarter, I think we're all going back to our first class of business school doing scenario planning. Nobody knows what will happen. So at Kingston Wharves, we have, various scenarios that we're looking at. And clearly we're trying our best to see how we can fill any gap that will arise. But the bottom line is that we don't know. If I could just take 2 seconds just to move the discussion to something else. We've been talking about the challenges for the local farmers and that there are some opportunities. I think what we need to do is to recognize that as a country and as a private and public sector, we have really been out front with this COVID-19 compared to our partners in the Caribbean.
And around the world.
And around the world. So I think what we need to do is to look for opportunity to export more. Yes, we can feed Jamaica, and we can do that well, but there is now, the new normal is for us now to again emerge as the main country in the Caribbean, serving the Caribbean.
Except though, Mr. Williams,
Yes.
that the call to export more is not new.
Right.
What different will be done outside of these circumstances? What different will be done to motivate or to encourage people to get into the business of export?
We use
Can I jump in for a second?
The world is in a crisis right now. The region is in a crisis. There is a clear opportunity. And as I said, we're already out front. So I think we really don't have a choice now. If you look at the tourism business, it is shuttered. And therefore, all that food, ground provision, that would be going into the hotels in Jamaica, we can now, the government have moved well to, do fresh juices. I know JP Group have been pushing a lot on that. But, the separate group, I know Richard Pandu and his team, they're pushing forward. We can now be very focused as a country and use this effort to feed the region.
Well, can we bring in the
can I jump
president of
in,
the private
moderator?
sector organization of Jamaica, Keith Duncan, here? Because I'm interested to know who should take the lead in pushing for more exports.
Can I jump in for a second?
Sure, go ahead.
This is more than the question of the long term. I have contacts in the UK who are importers of Jamaican products. And just this morning, they're asking the question as to whether there is, because they're hearing rumors that we're going to lock down the port. And I think we need to be very clear how we send the messages, because they are relying on currently being served with Jamaican products. I think we need to also ensure that the supply lines are safe going out for current products, but at the same time, the messaging that we send as to what we're doing need to be very clear. What does lockdown mean? If we're opening the port for inward cargo, it should also be clear that we are supporting our exports and supplying the markets which already depend on us.
Very well. Do we have Mr. Duncan on? If not, then we could hear from Mr. Johnston in respect
here,
of
if you
who should
need
be
me.
taking this lead on seeking to increase exports. Is it a government issue or is it an issue for the private sector? Mr. Johnston?
It's a productivity issue. So can we supply the products at a price that can be sufficiently low enough to compete with other people? So maybe now that products are not coming from everywhere, we have a chance. At the end of the day, we have to be productive. So let's hope that our farmers and our producers realize this and come out of this with a renewed effort to become more productive.
Yeah.
David Martin, I'll allow you to weigh in on the matter.
Yeah, so just building on what Sir Johnston just said, when you heard me mention earlier that we need to create an enabling environment, at the end of the day, we have to get our cost of production right to compete externally. And on the cost of production, you have a productivity issue, which you can resolve with the appropriate application of technology. And you have, like, for example, post-harvest handling of fruits and vegetables. I mean, as soon as fruits are harvested, they need to be chilled, sanitized and chilled immediately, and you maintain a cold chain to extend the life of these fruits and vegetables. We need to apply this kind of technology more in Jamaica, which there's lots of opportunity there. And on the cost side, the inputs are very uncompetitive here compared to the people we are competing with. And we have to look for ways to address the cost of input problem. So, fertilizers, pesticides, all of these things are 50% to 75% higher than another growing country. And that's who we compete with. So So that's what I meant when I said enabling environment is we have to address
Hello.
those factors. The manufacturers and exporters have advocated for the government to sort of offer us some sort of incentive via tax relief on money we spend on R&D. So the private sector needs to invest in R&D on the very things I'm talking about, and we're just asking some relief on that investment.
Mark Gonzalez, I want to come to you because one of the most uncomfortable things operating in this time is we're not sure when it will end. We don't know when we will be back to business as usual. Does that make your members uncomfortable, and how are you dealing with that uncertainty? How do you plan in that uncertainty?
The thing is, as far as we are concerned, right, the logistics business is alive and it's here to stay, notwithstanding, however, that for our clients, they depend on some external providers, such as, for example, I will use Amazon as an example. If Amazon have a problem, then it will be a domino effect on us. However, what we've seen in the recent past is that they, as it were, bounce back very quickly. So they have the resources and they are able to, wheel the engine, so as to speak. And we are not seeing right now, we don't know how long this will be, and I think that it is going to be a long-term effect right across the world. And so we are prepared and we stand ready to serve the people.
Well, let's go back to Zoom because I think Mr. McMorris from the JCC was trying to come in on this issue as to who should take the lead in respect of increasing exports. Mr. McMorris, what's your take on that?
Yes, well, obviously the private sector have to take the lead. The point I wanted to make is that there have been some long-standing barriers actually exporting, long-standing bureaucracy to actually exporting. And so for the people in this room or in this chat, I mean, certainly that there's an opportunity to look at the bureaucracy involved and really determine what is essential and what is not essential for the export. Of course, realistically, for anybody exporting, the domestic market is a very important component of keeping your business stable. So I would say that food security and having our domestic market or rationalizing for our domestic market makes a lot of sense while even looking at export. But we've always seen, certainly for our hotel industry, we've seen where we don't supply, Jamaica does not supply the majority of items that are demanded by the hotels. They can't. So we're talking about export, but realistically, we're not even supplying our own hotels. So that is another issue. I think that we have to just be realistic about when we are thinking about the issue. Yes, we should never let a crisis go to waste, but we really have to be very realistic about how we are looking at the issues, or we will never get to the solution.
Keith, perhaps you can weigh in on that matter as well in terms of the driving force behind next steps.
Mr. Duncan?
Yes, what was the question? I didn't hear the
There is
question.
a
I'm sorry.
capacity issue that was made mention a while ago.
I think he's on now.
He's there?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
The driving force behind exports, building capacity and the productivity of the Jamaican manufacturers. Who has that heavy hand? Who steers that ship? Should it be a government imperative? Should the private sector recognize the opportunity and take it and run? Who should own that?
The public sector, private sector partnership is always is extremely important because there has to be a joined up approach in that regard. Like as David was saying earlier, there is an R&D component to this all. There is the issue of scalability and to be able to focus on areas where you have a comparative and competitive advantage. What's the role of the public sector there, and as the private sector drives that engine of growth, to really focusing on the sectors that we have really that kind of advantage to really move it, because there, as as Michael said, there is import substitution, and then there's an export market. In which specific sectors do you focus? You can't just move towards protectionism without understanding where you have that advantage, as that will also just really if you're producing at a much higher level of cost than you can get from imports, then what you're doing is really subsidizing your domestic, when you should really be looking to build scale, as we're seeing with the mother farm concept, in terms of farms of scale that incorporate small farmers. However, that is the kind of thinking that we need to do. So we need to continue to innovate and really think through how we build in these areas where we have a competitive and comparative advantage. And that is a joint effort. And in the same way, a few years ago, where the Economic Growth Council was able to do consultations, widespread consultations to develop that roadmap, we need to do a roadmap now for post-COVID to see what are the areas we're going to focus around. What are those key sectors? Where are we going to get the growth? How are we going to strengthen our domestic economy? So the risk that we just faced, and that because we are exposed to vulnerable industries, when we have 9/11, tourism slows right down. When we have a 2008, 2009 crisis, tourism slows right down. However, tourism has done very well for us, but we have to recognize that there are vulnerabilities, and that we have to strengthen areas where we have control. And so therefore that work needs to be done. And I'm happy that people are thinking that way right now, because I've been in discussions with quite a few people, and we want to be able to collaborate with a JAMPRO, collaborate with all private sector organizations coming together and really trying to really work through that roadmap.
While I have you, Mr. Duncan, have you yet been receiving the dollar figure for losses as a result of COVID from some of your members, or at least the percentage?
Lost you again.
Mr. Duncan?
We've lost the main group.
Was there another question?
No, we're trying to find out from you, while we have you, whether you have yet been receiving from your members in the PSOJ the dollar figure, or at least the percentage of losses so far under COVID.
Well, I don't think we have all that data yet, but what we know is that there's a significant slowdown in business. I mean, maybe revenues, and it depends on the sector. We know for tourism, for sure, that's a total lockdown. And we know for the attractions and the linkages to tourism, they will be significantly impacted. And, those who supply seafood, those who supply poultry, vegetables, all that has been going into the hotel sector. That there has been a significant, that is like zero. I mean, so therefore, for someone who is supplying poultry, maybe about 30-40% of their business has disappeared. So how do we look to, and that's going to impact government revenues also. So we're going to see government revenues slip also significantly, which would and we're going to have to take a hit right there, and it could mean that there are some other macroeconomic situations and variables that we're going to have to be dealing with going forward. But I think the whole world is facing that. It's just how do we work on the sectors that are more resilient at this point in time, and how do we keep the economic activity rolling in the areas of manufacturing, agriculture, wholesale distribution, and the business process outsourcing, which is continuing to do well in this environment, with the social distancing principles and protocols in place, sitting 6 feet apart, etc. So there are sectors that we need to focus and build, and I mean, for example, the BPOs, they're grabbing business from other markets right now, because they have been able to get to put in the protocols as prescribed by the Ministry of Health, and they've been able to get business from others who are shutting down.
I want to bring in the team from Customs, the Jamaica Customs team, and before we wrap up, I want them to speak to those who interact on a regular basis with Customs, to ensure that it is business as usual. What do you want them to change? What do you want them to know in this time of COVID?
All right, so just to piggyback on what Mr. Keith Duncan indicated regarding revenues, and that for our early estimates based on the forecast, we observe based on our analysis that at least 30%, we will be at least about 30% below, and that would be mainly be impacted within the first quarter, April to about June, right? And so I think maybe we're expecting to see some recovery before that, right? So that was a conversation, a question that he had asked before, and just a reminder from Keith. Now,
Your customers.
In terms of our customers, I will allow my team members to weigh in, but in terms of our customers, we want them to know that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that the health and safety protocols are in place for them to keep them safe. But outside of that, we want them to know that business continues, and we are putting in every single apparatus and measures in place to ensure that is happening. We spoke earlier, based on the terminals, about even the appointment system, ensuring that persons are using door-to-door services. Customs as a similar service that we want also that our customers be aware of. I'm going to allow the Deputy Commissioner or any one of the team members there to speak further on it, which is the ECCP. But for us, business continues, and we want the creative juices of all our stakeholders and our customers to put into play while we accept any recommendation that would augment the process that we currently have.
So Mr. Lowe, perhaps
yes.
you can pick up with that. We're talking a little bit about how things change on the ports and how you want customer behavior to change. Let's talk about what you want them to know.
As the Commissioner said, it is very important for us to let the public know that customs continues to be open for business. But in doing so, we have to safeguard both the customers and also our staff, and therefore physical or social distancing is very important. So for example, we need persons to make appointment with the warehouse operator at the port as required, but also when they come to clear their cargo to ensure that they obey the safety and public health requirement. We have our express clearance service, and we advise that persons make use of that, and that is a system whereby we are encouraging the custom brokers, the freight forwarders, the port operators to take the appointment and make the declarations on behalf of the customer, thereby you reducing the interactions and the port interactions with customs. We have a full service where you can pay before, do everything, you can be represented by the freight forwarder, by the custom broker on the port, and so you will get almost a full service delivery, and the distance is reduced between yourself, the port, yourself, and customs. So we're encouraging persons to use that facility. We continue to ensure that the custom brokers, the freight forwarders, the agents are properly trained to utilize that service. So I just want to again emphasize social distancing while we continue to be open. Use your custom brokers, use your freight forwarders, use your shipping agent to get the information and to prepare the declaration, send to custom, have it paid for, witness the examination if you can, and that will make it easier for all of us.
Might I just add?
Sure, go ahead.
Especially for those persons who would have traveled in the period as announced by the Prime Minister.
That's March 18 to 24?
That's correct.
23?
Persons are coming to our ports to clear shipments, and they actually came in the country within that period. So what some persons have been doing to disguise themselves is to forego the passenger allowance. So instead of coming to customs to say, I traveled and I need to benefit from my allowance, they are disguising themselves by not telling us that they travel. So our officers have to be more vigilant and to be questioning them a little bit more, conducting proper interviews to ascertain whether or not these persons actually traveled. So I want our public to understand that when they do that, they put us at risk, they put the wider public at risk. So I want them to ensure that they adhere to the quarantine requirements. And as Mr. Lowe mentioned, contact their custom brokers to do the clearance. Contact their agents who will facilitate the clearance on their behalf so that we can all be safe.
We're almost out of time, but I must ask, aren't there any technological systems that would link you with PICA, for example, that could identify these persons as having been, as having traveled recently?
Yes, we do have online services, for example, or electronic passenger declaration, where the C5 card is also being replaced by an electronic service which is integrated with the customs management system and the immigration system. It is being used, but will be pushed for mandatory use. And also to, as Mrs. Graham had mentioned, the benefits, that is also being stored electronically within our system. So we were able to identify those persons beforehand and to ensure that we have that list of persons who we are expecting to come into us because they would have traveled within that period. And so we were forearmed with the information to ensure that we protect our officers, and not only that, to ensure that those persons don't turn up and are allowed access to the port. Of course, based on the instructions of the Prime Minister, they are not eligible to be doing business with us. They should be in self-isolation.
And I just want to say that persons might be concerned that their goods may be auctioned. We have, in keeping with the health requirements, we are not having any public auction now, and therefore they shouldn't be worried about the expiry of the 14 days and whether their goods will be auctioned.
Our reliance on technology is going to be critical in this time of COVID, and I see where it's being put to use here at Jamaica Customs.
Wonderful. And as you speak about technology, our system allows us greater access to data. And as it relates to this current time, we have been utilizing the data and working with JMEA, the president, to share certain information so that it could give potential for greater import substitution at this time, as well as the potential for export.
I think on that note, we're coming towards the close, and I just wanted to certainly, the folks here in this room, just talk a little bit about the way forward and life after COVID and where you see the light. David Martin, I'll give you the first word.
So what all of us are currently with as we speak is what we have to defend.
Not hearing him.
Sorry, what all of us have to do at this time is start to imagine the future. And we're actually actively engaged in that exercise, certainly for my businesses, where, you know, how to restore and rebuild the business in the future. This year, I mean, you asked the question, what are our projections? Right now, we think our revenues will drop between 20 and 50%, depending on which business you're looking at. And this issue, the travel industry, we think we need to plan as if it's going to last until next year, April. It's going to take a year before we start to see some level of normalcy restored to that industry. So what we have to do is, you know, find new ways of marketing our products, present it into new markets, do new products that resonate under these circumstances, and create new business models that are more amenable to the current circumstances.
We're fast running out of time, so permit me to interrupt you because we need to get some other quick feedback. Certainly would like to hear from Michael McMorris from the JCC in respect of the way forward. We can give you half a minute or 30 seconds, sir. Anyone you prefer.
Sure. That's great. So the issue of collaboration to get to solutions, I think what this crisis has presented us with is that ability to get together very quickly electronically, and so that's going to facilitate a joined up approach to trying to solve the really big problems, like I talked about the barriers to export, like I talked about the productivity issues, supplying the hotels. We have a mechanism now where and a spirit to collaborate, and I think we should use that and keep that as we try to recover.
Mr. Johnston?
You're asking for me?
Yes, sir. Yes. The way forward in 30 seconds.
The JMA and the JEA have a body already that can deal with a lot of the planning for exports. Just need to add some agriculturalists to that body, and you have the full team there to develop an export drive.
Mr.
Thank
Waugh,
you.
I see you there from the Jamaica Society of Customs Brokers. Way forward for you and your members.
Well, we thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the discussion. And going forward, we have initially now we are basically doing business in a different way. We're basically working remotely in most instances. Some of our offices are closed in terms of physical, in maintaining that physical distancing. And the way forward, I see this as a paradigm shift as it relates to how we do business. We should know we are now embracing the online facilities that exist, and I believe that going forward, that will play an integral role in how we do business. And as a result of embracing this new paradigm, it means then that we'll be more efficient. As it goes for export, we should not only think about getting the products into that market, but we should find a way how to get them distributed into that market and how the procedures that will be required to clear those customs jurisdictions. So it should be a holistic approach in terms of how we build out the potential for additional export benefits from this pandemic, and in terms of knowing how you access those markets so that we don't find ourselves spinning around when we get to that market in terms of getting the products to the consumers there. As it relates to the import side, as with customs, I want to thank customs for the approach that they've taken in terms of the renewal of custom brokers licenses and allowing the continued functioning of custom brokers, which is very integral to the whole process of the importation process.
Yes.
As well as the extension granted to the manufacturers, which allows them to continue to do business. And it is very important that we have that stability and not be focused on trying to get renewals and all that done.
We're going to have to take it there,
It is a smart move, and we really applaud the Jamaica Customs Agency and this endeavor. And going forward, we continue and stand ready to give our full support and whatever we can do to make Jamaica Customs, Jamaica succeed, we are there. Thank you so much.
We're going to have to take it there. I give you the final word, Commissioner, as we have to wrap.
Okay.
You brought the folks to the table. Final word.
Okay, so this virus causes us to be in a process of reimagination, of collaboration, of cooperation, of partnership, being solution-oriented, and to look at Jamaica as we grow within while we look at how we continue to do our export and to do business in every way possible. So it forces us to build on our productive capacity and to keep our industry alive and being ready, but focus also on quick intervention for quick recovery as we go into post-COVID.
Well, what a note on which to end, Customs Commissioner Velma Ricketts-Walker. We have come to this end of this very interesting and engaging online forum, Sustaining the Jamaican Economy Amid COVID-19. On behalf of the Jamaica Customs Agency, I'd like to say thanks to all our participants this afternoon.
Thank you so much to all the listeners everywhere, and Jamaica remains open for business.
Good afternoon.
Well done.
And you've been watching JNN's live broadcast of the Jamaica Customs Agency's online forum. On behalf of the entire technical and editorial teams, Michael Sharp wishing you pleasant viewing.